Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about 3 things to acknowledge your partner for more often. And this is to prevent feeling taken for granted.
It doesn't feel good in a partnership to feel as though what you do, who you are, is taken for granted after a while, or you don't feel seen, you don't feel appreciated. And this episode is going to be about you, ideally both of you are hearing this, acknowledging more. And we are talking about verbal acknowledgement. And where this came from as a reminder is last night, Aaron got home from Austin, Texas after his cryptocurrency event, and the evening went how it went. We were getting things done, had things to catch up on. And we reached this point where, to be honest, we got in a little tense disagreement, right? And we're not going into that part of it, because what really it came down to was we both had been doing our own thing. Like, he had just given a lot of energy at the event, and he was doing that for our family and for our financial legacy. And I was serving Sky and being with her and taking care of the home and managing the business at home. And so we were laying in bed, and I feel like what we both really needed was acknowledgement. Like, we deep down needed to feel like it was recognized, and not just, oh, well, you should have done those things because you're a mom, or you should have done those things because you're, a dad and a husband and wanted to be at that conference. To have it truly feel appreciated.
And just as a reminder, we're recording this the day after, but you guys are going to be hearing this next week.
That's true.
So just to be clear, in case you listen to this week's episode, you weren't really messed up on the timing.
Yeah.
But I want to go back just a little bit, because if you remember from last week, we got into a little disagreement, and I shared what my belief was underlying that had me take what you said as, oh, you think I went to that conference and came back exactly the same and nothing changed. Now, why we wanted to really talk about this is because, yes, that was one of the main reasons that we got into that tension. And that ended up lasting, 20 minutes, and then we kind of repaired. But in our repair process, now that we're in our bed sleeping or about to sleep, we also realized that a part of why our conversation went the way that it went is that we, probably more so for you, were missing that acknowledgement. And so I just want to say how I approached my repair was to allow you, I'll let you go into it, share what you wanted to be acknowledged for, and then I provided some background context, not to invalidate, but when I got back, I assumed, and this is a key here, I think, with acknowledgement, you assume a lot. You assume that your partner knows that you love them. You assume that your partner knows that you appreciate what they did, and that just gets you into trouble. So I assumed, in a sense, that we were going to acknowledge each other when we did get to sleep that night. But because we didn't acknowledge each other earlier on when I got home, I think that missing is what led to the feeling, hence the name of this title, feeling a little bit taken for granted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and, for those of you listening, maybe you don't even pause to do acknowledgement, and you're both apart for work hours, and maybe one of you does travel for work. Whatever it is, when was the last time that you came together to acknowledge each other? Or do you just think, oh, well, we just do what we do, and we are just kind of assuming that needs to be done because that's what our roles are? No. That's going to only drain your love account. That's only going to make you feel unseen and taken for granted. So let's go into the first thing, right? Because there are 3 things to acknowledge your partner for more often. Number 1, more straightforward, is what you see them doing that is easy to take for granted. Mm-hmm. So those things that, again, it's like they're just doing it. You have your roles and responsibilities. Could be how they take care of the kids. It could be that they put the kids to bed at night and you get to relax a little bit. It could be the amount of dishes. It could be that they go and work hard at their job. Anything that is just quote unquote the things they do, their roles, their responsibilities, and you could just kind of like say, but that's just what they do. No. Pause and acknowledge them for the things, especially the things you know that expend a lot of their energy or take a lot of focus. And I bet you if you pause and just say, hey, I want to say, I really appreciate how hard you work for our family. I mean, imagine how big of a deposit that will be to their love account, even though, again, it's like their role. Or imagine pausing and saying, I know there's always just so many dishes and toys to clean up. I really appreciate, I appreciate so much that you do that.
Dog hair to pick up.
I appreciate so much that you do that. It will mean a lot to them.
So in part of our repair, I acknowledged, because we do often acknowledge each other for the doing, but in this case, when I had went to Austin and came back, I needed to acknowledge in your doing that you took care of Sky, you took over the role that I normally have, which is to put her down at night, and obviously you had to wake up more often in the middle of the night to get her to go to sleep again, which I would do, maybe one of those extra ones. The bath time, you got to do by yourself, and just kind of keeping the house clean and organized, all you had to do by yourself while I was gone. Mm-hmm. And so just to kind of give you more insight of how we actually have these conversations in our repair process, which you should all know by now, the 5 R's, we really came back around, right? And we said, well, what was the source of this? Sort of we were reflecting together after we had repaired. A little bit of a lessons learned, right? We were actually reconciling. And I realized that is what needed to happen in the acknowledgement of what you had been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So that's the first thing, right? Today, tonight, acknowledge your partner for the things that you see them doing that are easy to take for granted because that's just their role and that's just what they do. The second thing to acknowledge your partner for more often is what you appreciate about who they are being. We can focus so often on what they do, but we are human beings. You could think of that as the attitude, who they are. There was a client recently, I think I mentioned this on a different episode, but it was so powerful. What he said was, I feel as though I'm only seen for what I do, not for who I am.
Yeah, and he even said, if we were in a place where there would be a robot built to do the things I was doing, to do the things I am doing for the family, then I wouldn't even be missed.
Oh my God. And it was just like, it just hit us all to hear that. And so to pause and to acknowledge your partner for who they are, right? So this could be their, being, their way of being, their energy, their attitude, who they are. Some examples, I really love how motivated you've seemed lately. Like that energy feels so good to me. Or, I've really noticed and I appreciate how uplifting and positive you've been, especially given all the challenges that are going on in our life. Mm-hmm. What's another way you'd say it? Maybe even, if you want to acknowledge me, Aaron, right now.
I was going to. And I feel like I have been doing this more often, but acknowledging you for how you're showing up with grace and being nurturing and being more playful since becoming a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even not trying to toot my own horn or get some extra points, but had acknowledged you at our dance session that we did for your birthday. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people acknowledge you for that as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing that really gets missed. If you are someone that is acknowledging your partner for what they are doing, that is good. And you just can't miss. This has to be, I don't really have a percentage, but maybe as equal to the amount that you acknowledge what they're doing is in who they're being. Because that is about their personage. That actually is a word, just came to me. I don't use it very often. But there is a lot more that's going on. We're not just doing a bunch of actions. There is intentions that we set. There is mindset. There's our emotional world. And that actually takes something. It takes focus. It takes intention. And to me, the best way you can acknowledge someone is where there was a choice to be made. And I'm going slightly away here, but it's easy to acknowledge someone, not just in the acting or being, but for like how they look, for example, right? Oh, you look really great. Now, why that's not that impactful is if someone is just a good-looking person and they've heard that a lot their life, there wasn't a choice to be made. So in a sense, like, oh, well, that's just natural. There was nothing I had to do. There was no intention I had to set in my way of being, in my energy, and how I showed up. And when we acknowledge our partners for these things that are just there, it doesn't mean that much. But when there was a choice to be made, they could have woke up and they could have been grumpy. They could have woke up and not been intentional and then let the past challenges or fears or upsets or things that were unrepaired go from the previous day into today. And then so they show up disgruntled and disappointed and low energy again. So for me, if you're really looking for places to acknowledge your partner, look for where was there a choice to be made, and really make sure you're doing enough of the acknowledgement of their being, because they specifically chose to be that way or show up that way for you as a partner, and it could have been a different way.
Yeah, I think this one also to link to last week's episode about your filter, which go listen to that if you haven't already, but your beliefs and your filter. This one is powerful too because it would force your mind to look for positive attributes about your partner.
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, whereas, if maybe you're having a rough week or you've been just annoyed about your partner lately, or you're only seeing this like, gosh, they're just this. It's going to force your mind, if you're like, okay, let me look for these positive attributes about who they are, who they're being. I bet you'll be like, wow, now that I'm paying attention to this, I really appreciate how patient they are with our kids. Or you know what, I'm so grateful that they wake up really peaceful and they're just calm. You'll notice new things about who they are, who they're being, their attitude, their essence. Because again, we don't want to just be a robot that can be replaced in a partnership or only seen for what we do. It matters that we are seen and recognized for our essence and who we are.
This is well said, and great link back to last week. You're expanding your awareness, and then you're starting to utilize your reticular activating system, if you remember that from last week, your RAS, to now go look for more of those things.
So true.
And then you build momentum around that. And it's probably, I would say, a key way to go to work on actually changing your belief system. We hadn't thought about that from last week, but this is a really great way to change that belief system. And that's the only way for real lasting change.
That's so good. Okay, so with these two things, there's still one more, but this is going to be one that you're going to be shocked and amazed by. You're not going to have thought of this. So there's acknowledging them so far for what you see them doing that's easy to take for granted. There's acknowledging them for who they're being or who they are. Their attitude. Also, if you acknowledge those things, what you could miss is what they would like to be acknowledged for.
Whoa.
The things, you could say all that and they'd be like, okay, I appreciate that. However, this thing right here, I really would love to be recognized for. So it would sound like this. Hey, is there anything that you'd like to be acknowledged for right now? Something that really matters to you, maybe something that I haven't verbally shared with you, that I see it, that I appreciate it. And it doesn't mean you're not paying attention. There just might be a blind spot, right?
And it might actually mean that you didn't notice it.
Yeah, exactly. And so last night even, Aaron had shared some great acknowledgments. Hey, I see everything you did for Sky, and I know that you really took care of the house, and all these things. There was still other thing. Yeah.
And I could see, now that you're saying this, I can see and sense how that really got us like 80% of the way.
Right. There was like a little bit more.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Which is, I wanted to also be acknowledged for in my free time, quote unquote, when she was napping. I didn't just sit and watch a show. I was responding to client emails. I even did calls with people about coaching. And that part, even though I know that's not something you missed, to hear that reflected back to me was the last 20% of what I needed to hear. So
now you just said something that's powerful that could have been easily missed.
Okay.
Because you could ask your partner that question. They respond back to you, just like you did. Hey, you know what? I'd really like to be acknowledged for in my free time when Sky was napping. I didn't just watch TV. I was actually doing work and keeping our business moving forward. Now, here's the key thing. You actually want to mirror and say that back to them because you could say, oh, yes, I acknowledge you. Or, oh, okay, I see. You know, something about, it's not quite acknowledgement. It's affirmation that you heard them. But it's very, very powerful for your partner to actually hear it back.
Yes.
And it might kind of sound like you're sort of parroting or something, but this has been studied so many times, and I don't know if it's like official science or there's research, but we've done it with couples and ourselves so many times that it's just different. If you say, I'd like to be acknowledged for X, and your partner's like, oh, okay, yeah, I acknowledge you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
It
just misses a little bit. And I think it's because when you say, oh, well, then in that case, I really do want to acknowledge you for, you know what? In that downtime, after you're doing so much with Sky and around the house already, that you could have taken time to relax for yourself because you didn't have it. But I really want to acknowledge you that you did work. You responded to client emails.
Yes.
I really do appreciate that.
Like even just hearing it right now, again, and you're so right in that mirroring is, and it's not done in an inauthentic way. Again,
yeah,
it's
like
only going to seem.
did pretty good right there.
It's not going to. It's not about parroting as in just I acknowledge you for. No, like connect to it and be genuine. Right? But if you love this person, can't you mirror back to them what's important to them? I would hope so. Right?
And you're kind of saying it in your own way, like you actually receive it, you put yourself in their shoes, and then you just say it back, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And it just shows, not even just shows, your partner feels as if you were really present and you really got it.
Yeah, 100%. So these are the 3 things to acknowledge your partner for more often, again, to prevent feeling taken for granted, to prevent feeling unseen, to prevent feeling like you're just roommates. So just as a reminder, it's what you see them doing that's easy to take for granted, what you appreciate about who they're being or who they are, their essence, their attitude, and then ask them what they'd like to be acknowledged for. Now, you might be like, okay, Freemans, how often? Things like that. We're not going to give you a certain frequency. I don't think that if it's genuine, there's ever too much. Maybe it's a daily thing for you in the evening. Maybe it's in the morning. Maybe it's weekly. I'm not going to give you a certain amount because it just has to be an intention that you're setting, this acknowledgement. And a big place to look out for is if you've been really busy, if you've been kind of doing your own things and maybe you've been working, taking care of the kids, traveling a lot, that's definitely a key time to do it, to come back together. So with that, a great way to acknowledge your partner also is to show them that you are desiring to work on the partnership and to grow and to learn. And so a couple ways to do that. If you haven't already watched our web class on the 5 steps to repair after conflict, especially since Aaron talked about, even a tense, it doesn't even have to be a huge, giant disagreement all the time, but a tense conversation that just, it didn't feel good. You can use our 5-step process to repair after that and come back together. So that's at onlinecouplesworkshops.com/repair. We are getting incredible feedback about that. Go watch that. And then to take it a step further, our communication mastery bundle. You guys, if you've been listening to us, there are so many principles and exercises that we can't even fully explain because we need to show you visuals. We need worksheets for them. And so in our communication mastery bundle, you get those worksheets. You get to see us explain it. You get to see it mapped out. You get to hear in-depth, lengthy examples and see us modeling the correct and incorrect way to do things regarding communication, conflict, and so much more. So go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com/communication bundle and take advantage of that discount right now. So with that, we can't wait to hear how this goes and acknowledging your partner more often. We love you all and can't wait to talk to you on the next episode.